All right, here we go. Welcome everyone to the 2025 Teach Access Student Academy. My name is Mindy Colin and I'm the Director of Development and Industry Partnerships. Before we get started, I would like to thank our sponsors for making this free event possible, our presenting sponsor Merck and supporting sponsors Verizon, Microsoft, Google, Meta, and Salesforce. For those of you who might just be joining, welcome to the Teach Access Student Academy. We're excited that you're spending time with us to learn about disability and accessibility. This is the final session for today, and we have 6 sessions still tomorrow. Before we start, I wanted to make sure you knew a few key items. We have captions provided by a live captioner, so to access those, you can click the CC icon at the bottom menu bar. To view the ASL interpreters, find the interpretation button at the bottom menu bar with an icon that looks like a globe. Click that and select American Sign Language, and a new window will pop open that you can move around your screen for preferred viewing. Feel free to use the Q&A feature to send questions during the session. Everyone will be able to view these questions, which can also be submitted anonymously. If you have any other questions, concerns, or accommodation needs during the session, use the chat feature and send a message to the hosts. This session is recorded and will be made available to everyone after the event. At this point, I'm pleased to introduce you, to Doug Roland, the founder of Feeling Through Studio, who will share inclusive, accessible, and collaborative storytelling. Doug, take it away.
Thank you so much, Mindy, for that introduction, and thank you to Teach Access for having us. Before we get into everything that we're going to be talking about today, I'd love to turn it over to my co-hosts here to just talk a little bit. If you could just share a little bit about just who you are and your participation in this platform, Feeling Through Studio, that we'll be talking about shortly. So, Roberto, would you like to just start off with an introduction?
Sure. Hello, my name is Roberto. This is my side name. Just a brief summary of who I am. I'm in Rochester, New York. I work for the Rochester Institute of Technology, RIT, and I am the STEM academic director, program director, I should say. I am deafblind, Latin. I am Dominican, but I grew up in America. Uh, and my background involved with Feeling Through Studio as a consultant in the development. Um, and at that time, I was working as a vocational rehabilitation counselor, and then I moved into my new position, but I've continued to work with Feeling Through. I'm happy to be here this afternoon.
And Sue, why don't you introduce yourself as well?
Thank you, Doug. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sue Ruzenski, and my name sign is S on the chest. I'm the CEO at Helen Keller Services. And the journey with Feeling Through Studio has been a very exciting collaboration with Doug Roland, who we started on another great project together and recognized how the power of storytelling is really important to get the voices of the community out there. And at Helen Keller Services, we have professional learning, but it's often built on like a competency-based model. And we knew that we could enrich the learning of many audiences, not only our staff here, but the partners and stakeholders that we work with in vocational rehab, the community, employers, university students, high school students. We wanted to really broaden and elevate, the understanding and experience of the community. So I worked really in many ways with my team from Helen Keller National Center, who were really instrumental in different parts along the way. I kind of marshaled our resources to support the project. And this included like initially networking. We have a network across the country, and it's really about identifying people who wanted to be interested in this project who were deafblind, so they could help us author this curriculum and be advisors help us with the content. And then it was about the resources that could support the accessibility of the process, whether it's a Zoom meeting and having, feedback from the advisors, or it's the filming and bringing in interpreters. If it's looking at the set and the environment for the filming, vetting the website. There were many, many different pieces, and there's people around me that have talent. And there's many deafblind staff that were involved. So it's really helping to coordinate and connect people for those purposes. And it was a true joy, I have to say.
Amazing. Thank you, Sue. And yeah, before we get any further, of course, it's important for us to define what is Feeling Through Studio, because Feeling Through Studio is the educational platform, which is really the framework through which we're going to be having most of our conversation today, which is certainly going to be primarily talking about accessibility and how that pertained to creating Feeling Through Studio and how accessibility is represented throughout this educational platform. But also it's going to lead way to some other aspects of conversation like intercommunity collaboration between the disability and non-disabled communities and a host of other topics as well. So first and foremost, what is Feeling Through Studio? Well, Feeling Through Studio is an educational platform that features disabled instructors teaching the user about disability through a video-based approach. So really what that means is it's an authentic way for users to learn about disability directly from the disability community. And in order to give you a visual of what that looks like, I have a 1-minute trailer that kind of showcases what the platform looks like and how it works, which will, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. A video is probably worth 10,000 words. So I'm going to play that now so that everyone can get a better sense of what this platform really is. So let me cue that up here. Again, just so everyone is aware, the video that I'll be playing has open captions burned into it, as well as audio description. Of course, we wanted to make it accessible. And of course, in talking about accessibility, we wanted to demonstrate accessibility wherever we could. So that will be the version of the video that I will be playing right now.
They just look at you like you came from space. That's not going to help much. Yes, I'm a blind person, but that's a characteristic. It's not who I am.
Text, welcome to Feeling Through Studio.
There are many things that people have yet to learn about deafblindness.
And only we can tell you.
This is going to blow you away.
A new kind of learning platform. A quick scroll down a web page reveals dozens of videos, text, where disabled instructors teach you about disability.
One of the largest misconceptions about people with blindness is that, well, what do you mean? You're not blind. You can see. You can see me right now. And it's like, well, okay, yeah, but I'm legally blind, so, there's a big spectrum there.
Cursor toggles buttons to reveal ASL interpretation and transcript for videos. Lesson plan about the inclusive dinner table. A powerful tool for schools, organizations, everyone.
People with disabilities are everybody. They're our friends, they're our family. Disability is the story of us.
It makes me weepy. I don't even know why. It's good, though, because I think it's important for people to see this.
The woman, teary-eyed, takes a deep breath.
This is us.
An image of 4 people around a table zooms out to reveal dozens of boxes featuring different content. Feeling Through Studio.
Okay, well, that's just a great opportunity to give you just a quick look at what is a really multifaceted platform. We're going to actually be playing a short video from it in a little bit so you can get a better sense of the content, as well as I'm going to be sharing my screen to walk you through some of the aspects of accessibility. But what we really wanted to show you was that this is a platform that includes, in its current version, it includes 30 plus individuals who are deafblind as instructors talking about many different topics. There's currently about 4.5 hours total of video content organized across 45 different video chapters, split up into 8 different categories to talk about everything from an introduction to the deafblind community to accessibility, assistive technology, relationship and family, topics that are universal topics like dating and romance and raising a family through the lens of individuals who are deafblind and disabled. The whole idea of this was to create not just an authentic, but a comprehensive and entertaining way to learn about disability. And before we go any further, I want to just give a very, very quick backstory to it, to kind of how we got here. I'm going to be truncating about 15 years into hopefully no more than a couple minutes, so bear with me. But I am someone who is not disabled. I don't identify as having disability. I grew up in an environment with no one in my immediate circle that identified as being disabled, and like many people, grew up not really knowing very much about disability, not seeing it represented in the movies I watched or just in the world around me very often. And about 14 or 15 years ago, I had a chance encounter with an individual who was deaf-blind. We shared a portion of an evening together, and it was really deeply impactful, first and foremost, because this man Artemio was a wonderful, open-hearted person who really made a personal impact on me. But the other reason it was so impactful was because in that moment I realized, wow, this is the first time I'm not only ever meeting someone who's deafblind, but it's really the first time I've ever even thought about this community other than when I learned about Helen Keller for one day in grade school. So it kind of sent me on this journey. And as a filmmaker, it ended up inspiring a film that I wrote that years later I would have a serendipitous encounter with Sue Ruzenski, to be able to collaborate with her and her organization to be able to tell this story authentically, because I knew very little about the deafblind community at the time that I was reaching out to Sue. I really only met this one individual, but knew, fortunately, had the sense to know that it was important to surround myself with people that knew much more than me so that we could make sure that this was something that was done right and authentically. And that led us onto a multi-year journey where we made the film was called Feeling Through. We cast an actor who was deafblind in one of the lead roles. His name's Robert Tarango. And we had wonderful success with this film, both in the kind of traditional theatrical setting of playing at tons of film festivals, winning tons of awards. We got nominated for an Oscar, but also we found it had this whole other life in the educational space. We started getting requests to share it at schools, anywhere from grade school through high school through university age, with organizations, at conferences. And what we found was that, storytelling was this really, really powerful way to have people not only start to learn about a topic that maybe they knew little about, which in this case was the deaf-blind community, but also to start to really empathize with and get really actively curious about learning more. So what we found in these screenings is we wouldn't just have people that enjoyed the movie. We'd have people that afterwards, where we'd always do a panel discussion and Q&A with individuals from the deafblind community, we found people really eagerly leaning in, wanting to learn more, wanting to engage with the community, and wanting to further their education. So a few years into doing many events like that, the idea came about of, well, from a personal standpoint, as someone who kind of lucked into this scenario where I went from knowing almost nothing about disability and not really knowing anyone personally who identified as disabled, to being surrounded by dozens and dozens of people in the deaf-blind, blind, deaf, hard of hearing, and low vision communities who acted as real mentors and teachers to me over the years, that I was like, how could we build something where other people who weren't as fortunate as me to just luck into this situation where I had dozens of teachers from, that are disabled themselves teaching me about disability, how could we create a framework for other people to have that kind of experience? And that's where the idea of Feeling Through Studio started to come about, a much larger collaboration with dozens of individuals. In this first iteration of it, it's a collaboration with the deaf-blind community. Our hope is to raise more resources to expand it across the disability spectrum. But again, in this first iteration, having dozens of individuals from the deaf-blind community that not only represent the spectrum of the deaf-blind community and how deaf-blindness can manifest in infinite number of ways, but also a great spectrum across age, racial and race and ethnicity, gender identity. Because what we really realized is, at the end of the day, there's no right or wrong answer to the crucial topics about disability. There's only getting a wide range of authentic voices weighing in on those topics to paint these nuanced pictures that is anyone's identity and any community's identity. There's no singular one way to represent that. So that's why this is a larger collaboration. So that leads me in to pivoting now to talk about the accessibility, which really allowed this collaboration to happen. And that was very present from the very start of this process. So Roberto, I'd love to turn it over to you. If you could start to maybe paint the picture of the ways in which accessibility supported the very early development of Feeling Through Studio.
This is Roberto signing. As I previously mentioned, I was working as a vocational rehabilitation counselor in the state of California. And I was working with deaf, blind, and hard of hearing folks, helping placing them in opportunities of employment or job training, partnering them with job coaches. And some people did not know how to get involved. And I wanted to make sure that they knew that they could get involved. So there's this awareness or lack of awareness. And some people just really wanted to know how, the actual logistics of doing it. Maybe you could read a book or an article, but there was a lack of personal narratives of the actual lived experience of folks. So that's where this project really came to be. And I thought this is the perfect time. Ironically, this was during COVID, where there was more social distancing than we could ever have imagined. And so we were trying to develop all of this virtually, but it was great. The platform became really open to various viewpoints of people who were curious about various aspects. And working within accessibility and different topics. And also, you don't often see a platform that is so inclusive of the features of actually using the platform. It shows in one platform, you have all of these features. And that is truly a testament to the investment. And really, I am so excited about the successful result of the project.
And Sue, I'd love if you could pick it up as well, because I know it was very much there's a lot of individuals from HKNC from the interpreting department that helped. I know there was a lot of work, leading up to a Zoom to make sure that everyone's accessibility was met. Can you give also a little bit more insight into that as well?
Sure. So the process. Oh, go ahead, Roberto. Did you want to say something?
Oh no, go ahead, Sue. Go ahead.
Sure. Okay. So thinking about the process where it had to be inclusive. It had to include people from all backgrounds, all walks of life, people who are deafblind, who had an interest and saw the value of this project. And I just want to give a shout out to the funder of this. We received a grant from the Lavelle Fund for the Blind, and that was really, really important to get us, where we are. But in order to make it inclusive, and really, it was about arranging support for communication for everyone who joined us, whether they be a spokesperson on a video, part of a roundtable, part of a Zoom meeting as the advisory group was meeting. Sometimes we would be looking and vetting the actual micro learnings that are part of it, so there was a whole process too. We imagined this, and it went far beyond our expectations in terms of accessibility, in terms of the standard practices, because there were things that were the gentleman we worked with, who was a good friend of Doug's, was able to incorporate and get feedback from the community about the nuances of what works for them, because accessibility is really, it's not one size fits all, and you have to be flexible. And with the deafblind community, in terms of the diverse communication preferences that people have, the degrees of vision and hearing, things like color contrast or lighting or background, or, whether they're utilizing a screen reader to navigate the web the website to be able to have full access, to be able to go at their pace. A person with different restricted fields having the ability to move the sign language interpreter and enlarge. I mean, it just went way beyond what we could have expected. And having, access to people here. We have a center in New York where individuals come from all over the country. They could participate and give feedback, some of our deafblind staff as well, and again, part of our advisors. So bringing our resources to bring that access during that process was so important. And we talk about all these features on the website and making the conversations fully accessible so that everyone's getting the same information and we're not missing out and trying to catch up. So important to provide that information. But the true thing too was making this, you have access to people. It's that connection. It's access to people who are deafblind, where many people who are employers who we work with in this field even have not really had many occasions to interact with people who are deafblind. So it really brought access to their lived experience, which was really the goal.
And I'm going to move in a moment to talking about accessibility on staff.
If I could add something.
Please, yes, please, Roberto.
Yeah, I'd like to add here to what Sue just said. Now, access, it's a very broad term. And some people get it, and some people, well, they don't. So if you say access, you might think it means about what your needs are, or focusing on needs alone. And the question really is there universal design? Is there universal design, especially on the website, access to information? And what would that mean? So will it fit various needs for various people? Really, everything is fast in 2025. Everything is coming at you 24/7. And research shows that compared to now, people are walking even faster than they were before. 10% faster than we were previously. I don't know what year they tested this in, but 10% were walking faster because we're always thinking about time and being prompt and getting to where we're supposed to be. And at work, we're almost overstimulated. You open up your email. If you've got it on your phone, you've got it on your next to your computer. You've got people who are coming into your office all the time. It used to not be that much, but now we have become kind of hyper connected, and it's a lot to mentally process. It's a lot of information that you are receiving, and more people prefer auditory reception, well, as other people prefer visual. Some people prefer to read their information. And how are you going to balance all of these needs? And so when you have these options, you can listen, or you can go to reading the transcript. And maybe you notice something different through these different channels because the brain processes this information differently. What an awesome concept. It comes back to the platform of Feeling Through Studio being so inclusive. Maybe the first time you watch it or you read it, and then this next time you watch the ASL interpretation, okay? And maybe you make some different sense or find out some new insight. So you have the information there, however you prefer to pursue it. And I think that in essence, is access.
Thank you, Roberto. And yeah, just to pick up on what you were talking about, we will showcase, I'll share my screen in a little bit to showcase the different accessibility features on the platform itself. But before getting into that, I just also wanted to note that in addition to the accessibility that went into the pre-production of this, or the conversations with a core group of individuals who are deafblind that helped develop every aspect of this, whether it be, what topics we wanted to cover, how the platform would be organized, who would be, different instructors that would be a part of this platform, or presenters as we call them. Those same considerations extended to the actual production or filming of all the segments of this. And that took quite a team of individuals working very closely with a number of people at Helen Keller National Center, as well as the interpreting team there, to make sure that each individual that was coming in to be interviewed or that we were working with that day, because the platform's a mix of seated interviews, roundtable discussions, and also short slice of life documentaries. But each individual we were working with, there'd be a lot of communication to understand the access needs and to design the set around that so that every aspect of this was accessible. And that meant, really having always a team of individuals. Every time we tried as best as possible to always have people that knew those individuals very well and very personally as a part of the team, because that facilitated much more intimate, having that kind of intimate understanding of access needs coming into designing the set was always helpful, but still there was always great communication with each individual to make sure that we were honoring that. So what did that look like? Well, some of our individuals were tactual signers with having that tactual ASL interpretation. We'd made sure we'd have the correct interpreters for that. For some individuals, when you're trying to make an image look nice and you have lights set up, for some individuals, we would always adjust the lighting to make sure that especially if there was the individuals using visual access to access an interpreter, we'd make sure that the lighting was set up in a way to not in any way impede on their vision and have it be something where that was creating accessibility there. We'd always be mindful of accessibility, of an accessible path to and from the set, and a whole host of considerations that was always, as Sue was saying, designed around the individual, because there's no one way to be accessible. It's really something that's designed around each individual and what works for that individual specifically. So there was always a lot of time spent doing that work and that communication to make sure that there was that one-to-one accessibility with each person that we were collaborating with. Which brings me to some of what, Roberto, you were already starting to share about the platform itself. I'm going to just briefly share my screen to just show you some of the accessibility that went into actually designing the site itself. So I'm going to share my screen now for a moment. And what you'll see here is when I go over to the categories section and where all the content is, this is just a look at the main part of the page where the video content is. Feeling Through is the film that I mentioned before that kind of was the precursor to this platform, and Connecting the Dots was the behind the scenes documentary. So those are featured at the top here, a very easy way to start this process of watching a short film and kind of getting immersed in some aspects of the topics that are later discussed down here. And as you can see, there is a wealth of content here organized across those different categories that I mentioned before that range from, again, navigating the world, showcasing how individuals use a white cane or guide dogs to navigate the world, topics on mental health and wellness through the lens of individuals who are deafblind, which was something that everyone in our core group mentioned was a necessary topic to have, and much more here. But just to showcase the accessibility, I'm going to click into one of the categories here, and you'll see we have our video player here and all the video chapters that are associated with this category called Education and Employment. And we worked with some open source code, and our web designer worked with open source code that he modified to allow all of our videos to have all these accessibility components built right into the player. So most of us are familiar with, the Vimeos and YouTubes of the world that have the ability to turn on and off captions, and now the ability to start to toggle on and off audio description. But we have a couple more accessibility features here. So we all built into the player, which I'll demonstrate. So again, of course, you can toggle on and off audio description.
A circle pops onto the screen, transforms into a logo.
And I'm just going to mute this so I can continue talking, which you can easily toggle on and off. But as I continue to play this, you can see we have a live transcript that you can open, and that's clickable. We also have ASL interpretation for every video. So this is all of these windows are also customizable in size and placement. You can just easily toggle them on and off, as well as closed captions that you can, of course, customize the look and size of the captions themselves. And it was really important for us to have all of those features and to find a way to build them into the player, because it was something that we wanted to make the smoothest experience possible. Again, a lot of the design of the site itself was conceived to be clean and look very nice, but also be easy to navigate and as intuitive as possible, so that that also made it more accessible. And lastly, something that was demonstrated in the short trailer I played earlier, each of these categories also has a short course guide associated with it, which is an opportunity for users to further their knowledge in an it's somewhat interactive way, as you can see here, on the topics that are being discussed in each of the categories. So this was just another way that a lot of users have found useful in a classroom setting. UCLA built a class around this last year, and the teacher there utilized those course guides to help build a framework to teach each category or section of the platform. And we found that to be another way that's also kind of creating an accessibility to the site, because it allows someone who's maybe utilizing the site in a setting like a school setting, who maybe isn't an expert on the content already, to have another tool at their disposal to be able to help teach or spread more information about that concept. So that was kind of a different way of talking about accessibility, but making the site accessible to more users to share the knowledge in more ways. So as we continue our conversation here, because I'd love to leave a little bit of time for Q&A if there are any questions. But I'd love to pivot to just a little bit more of a broader conversation about accessibility for a moment. Again, this platform in its current incarnation is a collaboration with the deafblind community. Roberto, I was hoping maybe you could talk, as someone who identifies as deafblind, talk a little bit about how accessibility impacts your daily life.
Sure. I identify as deafblind. I actually genetically am deafblind. I have a condition that impacts my vision as well as my hearing. When I was born, I had 20/20 vision. I was using hearing aids. I could hear words and understand some words, but not full conversation. Later on, I was not able to have any auditory stimulus. I couldn't use that at all. And then later on, I lost vision to the point where I could not drive. And then I had other health issues pop up. As people get older, those things tend to happen. Um, Other diagnoses, if you, so to speak, diabetes or whatever. But the point for me is that I did have other things that affected my vision. And so now I use tactile signing mostly for communication. And my access has changed over time, what accessibility is for me. And I really enjoy that because I want to know what people need. I want to know how people receive information and make sure that they fully understand that information. People have to really focus on information to get it, to process it. Whatever information that whatever way you receive it is really absolutely incredible. You can do it so many ways. I guess through my age, I've gotten a little bit more wise, if you will, about my health, about my well-being, about my overall presence, if you will. And not just saying, yes, I understand the information, but making sure that I understand the information how I need to understand it, and communicating specifically for me in pro-tactile. So a touch-based language, a new language within the last decade or so, different from tactile signing, pro-tactile. Once I learned that, I was very fortunate. I've been fortunate to be able to use that in some settings, usually in-person settings, because there's so much happening in the environment that I'm maybe not aware of because of my sight. So, or like I was mentioning before, the overstimulation. There's phones, there's computers, there's too many people, there's so much happening around in the environment in one room. If you go to a conference, right, there's so much, there's lighting, there's noise, there's ambient noise. So I tend to be more tactilely based to receive my information in those types of settings. Now, here we are virtually. I am in my own office. There's not that much stimulation. I'm able to control that, and I'm able to focus in on using an ASL interpreter, a visual language today. I'm looking at someone signing. So I have options. I'm lucky that I have options. But again, it will depend on the setting, the time of day. Maybe in the morning, I'm fresh and I'm operating at full capacity. And later on, or maybe I need some more coffee to wake up. But later on, I might need to change. And it's important to communicate those changes. So the point is, yes, more and more nowadays, we are lucky that technology is available. I use this iPhone. It's a blessing. It really is. I can't live without it. I know many of you are the same. You're addicted to your iPhones, right? I can go to Starbucks and I love coffee. I love coffee. So I'll go to Starbucks, and before I could see the menu. I could and I could try a new drink. Now, not so much. I'm not able to see the menu anymore. However, I've got my trusty iPhone. I take a picture, I use Zoom, I zoom it in, and then I can point to my iPhone to the barista and say, "This is what I'd like to order." Wow, I've got this accessibility right in my pocket. And so things have changed for me. And that's like the world, right? It's going to evolve, and I'm going to evolve, and my options will evolve. And that's so great for me. I'm really in a privileged position in that way, so that I am able to have options. Some people don't have that access, and I understand that. I want to recognize that. But I think this platform will help make connections and perhaps inform people about tools that they didn't know about so that they can increase accessibility for themselves or for others. So I think this is a great source of information.
Amazing. Thank you, Roberto. And I'd love to, again, leave a couple moments here for any questions there might be. But just before we pivot to that, Sue, is there anything that you wanted to mention? I know there was a point that you wanted to share about perhaps around the just this being a great way to introduce people to a community that often is a community that maybe the larger population isn't very familiar with. Is there something that maybe you want to share around that?
Sure. There's so many things I'd love to share about this project, but you know, we hit on so many of the goals, and the big one I think was the access and that connection with the community. And for the authorship of this project, these are the important topics. These are the voices of the people from the community that are available now to many audiences. And we thought about the audiences that we were connecting with. And, their information might be very narrow, but you have here an array of experiences, of people's lived experiences, of their perspectives. And the goal really about bringing people together and enriching our understanding, our meaning about this community. And that's what this does. And then at the same time, it's giving you that experience, that practical application of accessibility. And I just want to say, because I know we're out of time, but half the battle is like really getting people to think about accessibility. Like this is an important thing we all should think about because it's good for everyone. And as Roberta was saying, like it's different for different people, and universal doesn't mean just one thing. But I want to just say I'm so glad that there's this forum and that you are all here with you're leaning in with a curious mindset about this topic of accessibility. So, that's half the battle right there. So, bravo.
And in the spirit of wanting to get to any questions there might be, I want to forego playing the short clip, the last clip that we had, because I want to give preferential treatment to questions. I guess I'll kick it over to the Teach Access team if there's any questions that came up to answer.
Thanks. There's currently one question in the Q&A, but I'll scroll back through the chat. The Q&A anonymous question was, how do you navigate the tension between relying on disabled people to educate non-disabled people because you're worried about authenticity? And are disabled educators on your platform compensated for their work?
Yeah, I'll start with the last question because that's easier. And if someone wants to chime in with the other part of the question, or I'm happy to do that as well. Yes, everyone was compensated that was a part of this. All of the um, presenters that are on the platform, all of the core group of individuals that aren't necessarily presenters on the platform, but were part of the core group that developed the platform, and everyone, the team that worked on the course guides, the all of the production team, everyone was compensated as a part of this. But maybe if someone, I don't know if Roberto or Sue, if you want to speak to that first part of the question. I think to me, what I'm gathering here is it's just to restate that, how to navigate the tension between relying on disabled people to educate non-disabled people. Um, does anyone want to speak on that topic, or you're probably both better qualified than me to address that.
Maybe Roberto would first like to answer.
Yes, I can answer that question. This is Roberto signing. Specifically, you don't have to really follow. We didn't tell anyone to follow a specific outline. We wanted them to share their story. We wanted them to focus on their own lived experience and to create that connection. Was their thing technology, programming, devices, various things? There's different topics available that people didn't know about. So there is mention of those things. How do you use this? Or we ask them, for example, the use of an interpreter, a sign language interpreter. You see that used here. How did you request the interpreter? What does that communication look like? So that's kind of what the individuals explained. And then they didn't necessarily tell us how they felt too, but they let us know how it felt when access was ready. The goal was to be accessible, and what did it look like when it was or was not. So I think that was a good point.
And just again, just one more thing to add to that, because Roberto, you put that so well, but something that I've learned as, again, someone who was very much an outsider some years back and coming in is there's no perfect way to do anything. And I'm sure there's people that might take issue with how we've gone about things here as well. I don't think there's a perfect way to do things. But what I can say is this platform wasn't, as Roberto was saying, is not about burdening anyone to educate others. It was an invitation for people that wanted to have a platform to talk about their lived experience and the things that they wanted more people to know about. And that's kind of the ethos in which we went about it. So that was something where we had a lot of people that were very eager to do that, and some people that we approached that just didn't feel like it was the right fit for them, and that was also okay. So, everyone that was a part of this platform was very eager to be a part of it, and amazing collaborators to work with, and that's ultimately what we're most proud of, is it being a platform that doesn't in any way focus on any one opinion or perspective, but is a amazing collaboration with so many people that bring different perspectives and amazing wisdom that collectively paint a really interesting and nuanced picture for people to just, not to like memorize talking points about, but to just get their brains working a little bit more actively around these topics.
All right, and our last question comes from the chat. They said, wow, the video player you developed licensable, or are these accessibility features being built into video platforms like Zoom, YouTube, Vimeo, etc.? Have plugins to adapt the video platform?
Great question. I'll just take this one since I've had a lot of conversations with Brian from Rival, who developed our website. In short, huge shout out to Able Player, which is an open source code that we largely built our player off of. Open source means open for anyone to use. So Able Players is available and free for anyone to use. However, there are a lot of limitations to it. So our developer basically worked off of that code to change the code to have it work within our website and kind of do some of the additional things we wanted to do. So the short answer is Able Player is what this is based off of. Huge shout out to Able Player, but there was some bespoke elements that needed to be incorporated to make this happen. And something that we do have a future goal of as we develop this further is to start from scratch and code wise and build our own player that has even more features than this one currently has. But it's a great place to start, and so great that someone's made that freely accessible.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for your time today. This was a fantastic presentation. Thank you for everyone that joined us today. Tomorrow, we have another full day of the Teach Access Student Academy. It will begin at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Pacific, with our Careers in Accessibility panel. The Careers in Accessibility panel, you'll hear from accessibility professionals currently working at Microsoft, Google, Verizon, Salesforce, and Adobe. Panelists will share how they got started in accessibility, what they have learned along the way, the challenges they have faced, and advice they have for those interested in working in accessibility. So Doug, Sue, Roberto, thank you so much again. Great having you. Look forward to talking with you all soon, and everyone have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much, Mindy and Teach Access. We
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
Thank you.